Hello, everybody. So a few years ago, like 4 years ago, I did one of these stop time videos on vintage Vanguard. And I listened to it recently, and yeah, it's pretty good, Frank, yeah. But there's a lot of stuff you didn't say about the Vanguard, baby. You got to get a little bit better than that. So Steve and I talked it over, and I decided I'd just do an update. That's all. I'm going to do it again. Give people more information. After all, the Vintage Vanguard is America's oldest continuously running jazz club, period. It is the oldest one in New York City, and New York City is the center of jazz, so it's the oldest, baby. It's been there. Max Gordon, the owner, opened it up in 1934, and it was kind of a beat club. If you know what a beatnik is, you got it. If you don't know what a beatnik is, well, it was like a 1930s hippie. That's the best way for me to say that. They had their own dress, their own walk, their own talk, their whole vocabulary thing, all that. And they generally like folk music and jazz. Max Gordon opened his little club with folk music and poetry, yeah, but very political poetry, and art, and the occasional comic. It was a small place, and he soon realized he was never going to have the place he wanted in terms of having a cabaret license, a nightclub, that, never, because when he applied for his cabaret license, the police department said no. Oh, no. They said, number one, you got to have 2 bathrooms. And you cannot be any closer to a church or a synagogue or a school than 200 yards. And his budget suggested that all he could afford was $100 a month. Now, okay, this is 1934, so that was quite a bit of money, okay, in those days. So he had to move. And he didn't waste any time. Before 1934 turned to 1935, he found himself a place on 7th Street. And it was called the Golden Triangle. Why? Because it was a basement joint, and the inside dimensions were that of a isosceles triangle. You know, 2 equal sides and 2 equal angles. Yeah, looks like an inverted ice cream cone. And the wide side is where the band played, and the narrow side is where the people played. So you had the band in this virtual acoustical shell, perfect for sound, except for the guys that are sitting in the back in that V part of the triangle. That's where it may not have been so pretty back there. But that's what we got, and it worked. And so he started doing a little jam session, jazz jam session on the weekends, sometimes Saturday, sometimes Sunday. Not thinking much of it. And some jazz artists came through there. Mary Lou Williams, came through there. Sidney Bechet, people like that came through there. But in the early years, mainly, he was still doing his folk. And he had added Caribbean music because of the changing diversity in New York, especially around Harlem and the Village. And some blues. Yeah, he did some blues there. People like Son House, and he came through there. He continued with the poetry and art. There was a young lady who came to the jam sessions and wanted more jazz. Her name was Lorraine. And she set a trap for him. She knew what he liked. I'm not going to go into that too far. But that's the first kind of investigation a woman would do. She would find out what you like. And she found out he liked this pastry at this little bakery, and one day she sat there and waited for him to come. And when he did, she attacked him with her ideas for his little isosceles triangle. Number one, you need to change that name. Number two, you need to bring in more jazz. He listened, but he didn't change very much. But over time, it went from just that one day to like 3 nights a week. And sometimes he booked 2 or 3 different jazz acts in the same night. Oh yeah. In 1940, he had brought in some big name jazz people, and the club had filled up, so he had an idea about what he could do. But now we're getting closer to the 50s, and Lorraine has him and his club in her crosshairs. Now, she got him to book a little bit more jazz. And by the middle 50s, the Village Vanguard was a jazz club, period. The majority of what was there was jazz. And the club was booming. So, of course, they became friends. The only problem was Lorraine was married to a guy named Alfred Lyon. And Alfred Lyon was a great record producer, legendary. So at least jazz had a common hold on everybody. Now Lorraine probably could have been a wonderful politician because somehow she convinced her first husband to work with the man who was going to be her second husband on a project. And that project was, she thought the acoustics in the Vanguard were great. And she thought Alfred could do a job making some great recordings there. So she proposed the idea to Max. And soon after she divorced Alfred and married Max, they started making a few recordings down in that basement. Yeah. And one of the first ones was Sonny Rollins' Piano-less Trio. The first 3 recordings of that sort were recorded at the Vanguard. And those albums are some of the most prized albums that any jazz player can have, especially saxophone players. Yeah, Sonny Rollins was the man, period. So everybody went and bought them. And they travel around the world, these albums. So before you know it, the Vanguard had an international reputation to the fact that live at the Vanguard meant these are some serious players playing some serious music. Musicians figured it out. If I do a live album at the Vanguard, it's going to sell. And before you know it, man, they were making lots of them. Not long after Sonny did his thing, Jerry Mulligan came through there. Let's see, Sonny was in there in 1957. That's the beginning of the golden age of the hard bop cross between modal music and bebop. Kind of Blue, Miles Davis at that period. Matter of fact, more great jazz albums were made in 1957 than just about any other year. By 1960, Jerry Mulligan had returned from Europe on that tour with his concert jazz band that was playing what we would call smooth, cool jazz. I almost said smooth jazz. Please don't do that, Frank. Cool jazz. And that was a combination of like classical music and jazz, kind of symphonic jazz. He recorded there. And that album sold well, probably one of the best-selling albums that Jerry Mulligan had. Cannonball Adderley, from right here in Tampa Bay, recorded his Cannonball Adderley sextet live in New York at the Vanguard. Wynton Marsalis recorded 3 or 4 nights at the Vanguard and then released a package of 7 CDs from those sessions because he thought they were so good. Cecile McLaurin Salvant won her first Grammy with an album that was partially recorded in the Vanguard. Part of the album was studio work with violins and cellos and full orchestration, and the other part was just Aaron Deal and his trio, piano, bass, drums. That section was recorded at the Vanguard. Once again, the Vanguard's reputation is growing because they produce more Grammy-winning albums. A project that started in 1957 was still winning awards in 2018. That's some legacy. And all because Lorraine wanted jazz so bad that she got into Max Gordon's head, ended up marrying him, and then directed the entertainment from that point on, including the recording sessions with her former husband, Alfred Lyon. Now, here is something that is important to know about Lorraine. She was, how shall we say this, a highly motivated lady. Not somebody you want to tangle with, because she was already ready to do business or to do battle. When her husband, Max, died, she closed down the Vanguard for one day, the day of his funeral. And the very next day, the Vanguard was popping again. She was a great advocate of jazz, live jazz. And I can tell you, if you ever find a recording that says live at the Vanguard, just buy it. The quality of sound is unbelievable. Recorded in this triangular basement, perfect for live jazz. This is the other part of the story of the Vanguard. I talked to my son, who's played all over New York as a jazz musician, and I asked him if he could give me some background information about this Vanguard, since I had never been there. He says, yeah, I've been there a few times, a few years ago. He says, and it's very unassuming. It's just this triangle with regular furnishings and everything else. He said, but whenever I go into a room, I snap my fingers to hear what that sound is going to be. Is it going to be a clean sound? Is it going to be colored? Is it going to be muffled? What it's going to be? He says, it's the purest sound I've ever heard. And that is a secret. It wasn't just that the musicians were coming there for the Vanguard's reputation. They were coming there for that extra special, crispy, natural sound that that room produced. So thank you, Lorraine, for turning it into a jazz club and then putting two husbands together to create this great legacy of jazz recordings. At last count, I calculate that there have been just under 60 recordings made at the Vanguard over the years, and you name them and they have recorded there if they are major jazz musicians, because that was the place to be. And guess what? You can still go to the Village Vanguard. It's not the largest club, it's not the fanciest club, but it's a real jazz club with a real legacy that will live a lot longer. And that's the rest of the story. Thank you.